Good morning. Breaking news. The U.S. set to announce today that Iran has been hiding a secret nuclear facility, and there's hard evidence to prove it. But now that we've found it, what can be done about it? The Michael Jackson tapes, the late singer's revealing thoughts on his painful childhood, his famous friends, and his own struggles with success.
Anybody else would probably be dead by now, or a junkie or something with what I've been through.
This morning, NBC News has obtained the exclusive tapes of Michael in his own words. And what a find. An unemployed man buys a used metal detector and unearths a buried treasure worth millions. It's one of the most significant finds ever, and it could have you thinking about a new hobby today. Friday, September 25th, 2009.
From NBC News, this is Today with Matt Lauer and Meredith Vieira, live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Today on a Friday morning. I'm Matt Lauer.
And I'm Meredith Vieira. Matt, it appears that U.S. intelligence may have caught Iran red-handed.
That's right. President Obama, along with the leaders of Britain and France, set to accuse Iran today of building a nuclear fuel plant and keeping that facility hidden for years. They'll demand that inspectors be allowed to conduct an immediate inspection. And
let's get the details from NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, good morning to you. And just how significant is this latest information?
Oh, this is a very significant breakthrough. If correct, and every official is telling us that it is, the United States has long suspected Iran was building a secret nuclear plant underground. But U.S. officials now confirm that they have breached that Iranian security and have the evidence to prove it. Although the plant is not in operation yet, the timeline is relatively short. Officials say it could be operational next year. The president has already shared this intelligence with Russia's president, and that's one reason why earlier this week the Russians expressed willingness for the first time to consider sanctions against Iran if Tehran does not comply with international treaties and disclose its nuclear program as it's required to do. Iran's president did not, of course, mention this nuclear program when he was at the UN this week, but Tehran knew that the United States was on to its secret, so belatedly has acknowledged the secret plant to the United Nations nuclear watchdog agency in Vienna.
Andrew, how do you think this might affect diplomatic talks between Iran and the U.S. that are scheduled to get underway very shortly?
Meredith, this totally strengthens the president's hand in lining up support for tough sanctions against Iran. And as I say, for years, Russia and China have blocked any action by the UN. So this also adds weight to Israel's warnings that Iran was a lot farther along toward developing nuclear facilities. The decision to go public will put huge pressure on Iran as these diplomatic talks, the first with Tehran in years, get underway next week. And it will put Iran on the defensive. Now, of course, the decision is what will the regime in Tehran do? Because it's believed to be badly divided, but will this accusation unite the regime against the West, or will it produce the possibility of a breakthrough?
All right, Andrea Mitchell, thank you very much. And for more, here's Matt.
All right, Meredith, thank you. NBC's White House correspondent Savannah Guthrie has traveled with President Obama to Pittsburgh. Savannah, good morning to you. And let me pick up on the point that Andrew is just making. The president had a huge world stage on Wednesday, giving an address to the United Nations General Assembly. Why do you think that this information on Iran and this secret facility didn't come out in that speech?
Well, senior aides tell me this is a really fast-moving development. First of all, they just learned of Iran's letter to the International Atomic Energy Agency on Monday. Then they felt they needed to brief the other countries that will be involved in those negotiations next week. So on the sidelines of the UN, Russia was briefed, China was briefed. Obviously, the UK and France already knew about it. So they wanted to get that in all together. And then officials from the UK, France, and the US traveled late yesterday afternoon to Vienna to brief the Atomic Energy Agency. So the moment wasn't right until now in the view of the administration. And they really now want to ratchet up the pressure on Iran. This is the eve of these very important talks. They want to make clear that Iran is not living up to its obligations. And I think we'll hear that tone from the president this morning, one of calling out Iran and saying you haven't come clean on what you've done. They think this is in clear violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as well as UN Security Council resolutions. that.
All right, Savannah, thanks very much. Savannah Guthrie in Pittsburgh this morning. David Gregory is the moderator of Meet the Press. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt.
I was going to wrap up the week with you and what's happened diplomatically, and one of the events I wanted to talk to you about was this apparent breakthrough with the Russians in terms of getting them to agree to possibly tougher sanctions against Iran. We now have a pretty clear idea as to why they may have agreed to that.
No question about it. And you now have a sense as well of what's been behind the Obama administration's policy of engagement toward Iran, which is to work on making some overtures to get them to the table while they strengthen their hand behind the scenes, getting some leverage to use against the Iranians. And the message will be very simple. It's time to talk. If you want to talk about giving up your nuclear program, there is a relationship that's possible with the West. If you don't, there's going to be real teeth behind some consequences. And now you have the opening created this week by the Russians to move toward tougher economic sanctions that could really hurt Iran, given the state of its own economy, because of the fragile politics of that country and of that regime, to have some real impact. So now is the diplomatic work that has to happen on the part of the administration. And as Andrea Mitchell said, this strengthens the case and makes it less likely that Ahmadinejad can maneuver around and sort of harangue the U.S. on one day and then say it wants to open up negotiations on another.
All right, let me move on to Afghanistan, and obviously this assessment from General Stanley McChrystal that's been leaked to the press, where he basically says we need more troops in Afghanistan now to ensure security, and without those troops, failure might be the outcome of this war. How is the debate over what to do? The president says he wants to take his time before making this decision. What kind of debate is going on within the administration as to what to do?
I think it boils down to one question, which is, would committing tens of thousands of additional U.S. troops make America safer? And that question is one that the president will have to answer. And there is debate on that question on his national security team, whether or not taking on the Taliban in a greater way, whether or not taking on the idea of the insurgency in a greater way actually fights al-Qaeda, makes the terrorist threat diminished. That's where the debate is. The president faces real political strains within his own party because Democrats do not have the stomach or the interest for more troops for a longer period of time.
Right, but remember what the president said, David. He said, look, when I send more troops in, I'm responsible if those troops don't come home. I'm responsible to their families. And I'm wondering how long it's going to be before he gets questions from the family members of the soldiers, the men and women who are already in Afghanistan, who say, wait a minute, though, if you don't send more troops, then are you risking the safety of my children who are already there?
It's an important question, and it's one that a lot of Republicans are asking right now. Either send the troops to fight and win or take them all out. The president will say, based on the debate they're having, that it's not as simple as that there could be a narrower strategy, a narrower focus on just fighting al-Qaeda rather than dedicating the resources to try to beat back the Taliban, secure the population. What's the key to this? Do they have a credible partner in the Afghan government? That's a big question right now for the administration.
But they also have to be careful.
They
have to be careful not to appear wishy-washy and all of a sudden redefining the mission at this stage.
That's where the criticism is. You're absolutely right. And that's why the president needs to come down and say either we're going to commit the troops as my commanders want, or we're not going to do that because we're fundamentally going to change the strategy. That's what the president has been saying, is that I want to get the strategy set first.
Right.
What he's paving the way for is a change in the strategy that he talked about in the spring.
Let me go to a more local story here in New York. Governor David Paterson, unpopular, at least in the polls, and apparently the White House has now said to him he might not be the best Democrat to run for a full term in that office. This has sparked a lot of debate and a lot of talk. You've got David Paterson on your show Sunday. What are you going to ask him?
Well, whether he's going to hang on. I mean, I think the question is whether he will fight this out, whether he thinks he's a liability for the Democratic Party. It's not just the White House. The White House, according to people that I'm talking to, were very responsive to the New York congressional delegation, which said, we're going to be in trouble here if we don't get David Paterson out of the way and have him not run. The White House view was the president's going to be owning all of this in a midterm election anyway. He's going to be seen as responsible. So they made the decision to intervene. We'll see what the outcome is.
And we'll watch you on Sunday. David, good luck. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
And now let's get a check of the rest of the morning's top stories from Ann Curry over at the news desk. Good morning to you, Ann.
Meredith and Matt, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Also news today, one of the suspects in that alleged terror plot aimed at New York City earlier this week will be back in court in Denver today, and he is charged with conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction. NBC's justice correspondent Pete Williams has more now. Hey, Pete, good morning.
And good morning to you. Najib Boulazazi of suburban Denver is now formally charged with planning to use bombs for some kind of attack in New York. The charge carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. Prosecutors say he and at least 3 other people, so far not named, went to Denver area beauty product suppliers in July and August buying gallons of chemicals that can be used to make a powerful explosive. The government says in late August and early September, Zazi got a hotel room in the Denver area, one with a stove in it, which he used to heat the chemicals to concentrate them. Court documents say he had trouble getting the explosive formula to work and was contacting someone for help. Law enforcement officials say he did not succeed in making it. Now, officials say federal agents are working to identify all the people that Zazi was working with and that some of them are now cooperating with investigators, Ann.
All right, Pete Williams this morning. Pete, thanks. In 2 unrelated developments, 2 other alleged plots were thwarted in the U.S. on Thursday. A Jordanian man was arrested after officials say he placed what he believed was a car bomb in a parking garage under a Dallas skyscraper. And an Illinois man was accused of trying to detonate what he thought was a bomb outside a Springfield courthouse. 5 U.S. troops were killed on Thursday in southern Afghanistan, including 3 in a roadside bombing. The deaths came as the Obama administration debates whether to send more troops to Afghanistan. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was hospitalized overnight after becoming ill in her office. She'd been treated earlier in the day for an iron deficiency. Ginsburg underwent surgery for pancreatic cancer in February. World markets are mostly lower this morning. As for Wall Street, CNBC's Melissa Lee is at the New York Stock Exchange with more. Hey, Melissa, lots of attention on this G20 summit.
Definitely, and so far the G20 has agreed to keep stimulus programs in place until an economic recovery takes hold. The Treasury Secretary, Tim Geithner, also says the group is very close to a consensus that would agree on reducing the reliance on export-driven growth and correcting the massive trade imbalances around the world. China, for instance, is an export-driven economy. The U.S., for its part, is a massive buyer of those goods. Also on the table today, a possible agreement on bank compensation. The meeting does continue on today, so Wall Street will keep watching. Ann.
All right, Melissa Lee this morning. Thanks so much. In a story we've been following, an Ohio woman implanted with the wrong embryo because of a fertility clinic mix-up gave birth on Thursday to a baby boy. Before the cesarean, Carolyn Savage said that she and her husband wanted a moment to say hello and goodbye before turning the baby over to his biological parents. And the extended NBC family has lost a much-loved member, Big Russ, the father of our late colleague Tim Russert, and the subject of the book, Big Russ and Me, died last night from natural causes with his family at his side. Timothy Russert, Big Russ, was 85 years old. So, and the first thought I had, you guys, was they're together again. It is now 7:12. Let's go back to Matt and Meredith. And Al, remember there was a Trading Places piece that Tim did about his father. Very poignant.
Yeah, wonderful guy, and our condolences and sympathies obviously go out to the Russert family once again.
Absolutely. How are you, Mr. Roker?
One of the greatest generation. Absolutely.
Right.
He embodied that. And as in there's little Luke Russert there, too. As we take a look and show you what's going on as far as your weather today, well, all eyes again.